Have you ever just sat in an art gallery and contemplated the work on the wall for hours? Nah, neither have I. My name is Marcus Westbury. I'm supposed to be some kind of art expert, but I'm really just a very lucky troublemaker. Over the last decade, I've been putting together arts events and festivals. I've worked with graffiti artists, anarchist collectives, major galleries and government policy committees. I've done media festivals, computer game festivals, theatre programs and even the Cultural Festival of the Commonwealth Games. One particularly dodgy poll even found that I was one of the most influential people in the Melbourne art world, even though only 5 people voted for me. Art is exciting to me, but the artists that get me excited aren't dead and revered in large institutions. They're alive and they're making things happen right now.
To be honest, I've never been as interested in the stuff that's in there as all this stuff that's out here. I'm much more into the real world than the art world. And the stuff that interests me, well, it's not quite art.
Actually, that sounds about the right description for this show. Not quite art. Yeah, not quite art. Welcome to part 1. When you think about art or culture, where do you think it's kept? Where do you find it? Maybe here, or here, or maybe even here. I don't know, what do you reckon?
Art galleries mainly, I suppose.
In an art gallery?
That big ugly place, what's it called?
Probably Federation Square. I think the things they have there are great.
Where do you find art?
Yeah, where do you personally find art?
Art's everywhere.
Galleries, streets, laneways.
Art could be in a piece of rubbish, it could be in the shape of a dustbin, a chair, a person's hair.
Where do you find art in your lives?
We don't. We're too busy working. Seriously.
I don't know, television, magazines, some books, you know.
Art.
Yeah.
On the streets.
Yeah, whereabouts?
Street art. Yeah, I got one on my phone, I'll show you.
Yeah, what do you got?
It's a stencil of a tree with help under it.
What do you value artistically or culturally? I mean, what's important to you?
You know, that's a good question that I probably need to find an answer to. Seriously.
Well, I guess it's all right for some punks and troublemakers to find art everywhere, but for most people, art is something you find in an art gallery. Art galleries. Grand theatres, concert halls. Yes, great art is almost as important as these great buildings that they put it in.
I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I was in my early 20s before I realised that the words opera house literally meant home of the opera and not Sydney's iconic tourist attraction.
Sometimes the combination of vision, location and ambition can be so powerful that you can easily forget the art. What was the last great opera that came from Sydney? I don't know whether it's Sydney's fault, but nowadays it seems like just about every city in the world wants to have its own iconic art centre. Take Bilbao, or Singapore, or even the Louvre in Abu Dhabi, where they're paying a couple of $1 billion just to use the name. This is Newcastle. It's my hometown. I know most people don't think of it as a world-beating art centre, but I love it, and it's where my art world started.
It's not as recognisable as Federation Square or the Sydney Opera House, but this is Newcastle's regional art gallery. We like it here, but, well, if you think it takes a bit more than this to put Newcastle on the cultural map, you're not the only one.
These are the grand plans for Newcastle's regional art gallery. It's been designed by the same architects that did Federation Square, and it's the centrepiece of a much more ambitious plan to develop an entire cultural precinct. Tonight, Newcastle's arts community is gathered for the Lord Mayor's launch of a new exhibition.
The work that you will experience here is risky, edgy and engaging. Indeed, the arts and the culture that goes with it is very much a part of our city.
Well, I think I'm not the only one that's been enjoying the complimentary wine tonight, but there's a much larger debate here that not everyone agrees upon.
The redevelopment of this building is absolutely necessary because we've run out of space.
Yeah.
The exhibition that we have is one of the finest in Australia, and certainly in regional Australia, and we can only get about 1% on display at any given time. Of the collection.
Yeah.
Now, the industry standard is about 8%.
Yeah.
So we're falling short of that, and it's simply because we don't have the space.
And what do you think that'll do for Newcastle, like a bigger, fancy new gallery?
Well, it has to be a good thing, like it, yeah. I mean,
it needs it, really.
I mean, still a lot of people think of Newcastle as an industrial city, but it's been changing. There's a development here that's changing, and things like this, develop it like this, that it's about the people. It's about people. You know, for the community, that's what you want.
Well, I don't know. I think as a space, this is a wonderful space. Does it really need to be redeveloped as much as it is proposed? I don't think so.
It should be controversial.
Yeah.
It should be leading edge. It should be edgy.
Yeah.
And I think it has all, at least the drawings that we've seen, have all those qualities. So we're hopeful that it will be an interesting cultural destination.
And not many detractors of the Opera House when it was first designed and built.
Detractors of this building too.
Some people are very excited about the prospect of a big redevelopment of the local art gallery. They'll think it'll attract tourists and put Newcastle on the art and cultural map. There's a lot of other people here who think the art and cultural map is already here, and maybe the Regional Art Gallery hasn't noticed.
I enjoyed the opening at the Regional Art Gallery, but it's not really how I remember art in Newcastle. So I thought I'd go and visit a place that feels a lot more familiar. This is Sushi and Cigarettes. There's no complimentary Hunter Valley wines here. It's strictly BYO beer. It's part art gallery, part performance space, and, well, part anarchy.
Coming back to Newcastle, and everyone always says in Newcastle they need stuff like this, like, you know, creative places for youth and, like, you know, not just the youth, but I suppose for alternative thinking. I'm not an art critic. See you later, guys. Thanks for that, eh? Thanks so much for playing. I love you boys, eh? See you soon. Yeah. But then, pretty much, I suppose it's... Say we've got the band playing tonight. They've played probably 10 gigs for us for free to pay rent because we let them jam here for free. This is John Hine, which goes under the Ink Lizard. Yeah. And he's actually a guy who just walked in off the street. He was just a cut. I think he's a jit rocker, maybe. Yeah. And he come in with a doodle on just a bit of paper. And it was a monster, like with just, I think, balls coming out of the mouth and, you know, a penis and this hideous head. And it was just so raw. And that's the thing we wanted, that a guy would come in and not be pretentious to the fact that he had to worry about the way it looked. Yeah. And we pushed him to have an art show, and he's had 2 now. Yeah. And it's just been the best response I've had from people. Yeah. It's been from John.
So this is all his work?
This is all John's work. He painted all these, like, yesterday, so... Wow. Yeah. Russ is a young skate kid from Newcastle. Yeah. He films a lot of professional and amateur skateboarding. And he's upstairs now.
I'm gathering what's up here. This is not typical art gallery material.
Well, I suppose when we started, we never envisioned that as an art gallery. Yeah. We wouldn't ever call it, I suppose, a gallery. But well, for us, like, music's art. It's an expression of oneself. And skateboarding to us is like... Skateboarding's probably the best form of art you'll get because it's like indestructible art. You've got these skateboards which just break. They break in half in like a day. And the next skateboard, they're getting sort of a whole new piece of artwork. There's guys like Ed Templeton and Thomas Campbell painting the skateboards. Whoa. Newcastle's still got that really backwards feel. It doesn't want to go forwards because people are afraid of change. We'll go at the front, they'll be painting the sign, they'll get yelled out by someone doing the Commodore and throwing Maccas at me. I'm like, why are you throwing Maccas and yelling at me? Because I'm putting a free art show on for a kid that likes skateboarding.
Well, Josh won't have that to worry about anymore. For all the energy and enthusiasm, this was actually Sushi and Cigarettes last night. Despite being slap bang in the middle of the proposed cultural precinct, these guys can't afford to pay the rent.
The most exciting things are often the ones that nobody planned for.
You'd think Newcastle, of all places, would have realised that. Fortunately, not every unfunded arts project in Newcastle is about to be thrown out. When I lived in Newcastle, this place was a bowling club with cheap beers. It's certainly changed.
What are they doing here?
Today?
They're not playing bowls, obviously.
No. We're preparing for a tour. These guys over here are like costume makers. These are all our props and flags and bunting. And down the centre here, the idea is to have sort of like a sweatshop, just a bunch of tables.
A sweatshop, that's a fine ambition.
Yeah. Esther is a visual artist, installation artist. She's going to set up a studio here. This is actually a recording studio in here. It's called the Institute, named after the Railways Institute Bowling Club. At the moment, there's a band in here recording an album, I think. It's a great usage of an old cool room. Yeah. On quieter day, you can bring a band out here and do a live recording.
How many people would be involved in all the different projects that are taking place here?
I would say a couple of hundred. That's the Wickham World Cup soccer tournament. We run a soccer tournament here as well.
On the old bowling greens?
On the old bowling greens, yeah. That's on tomorrow. So. Once or twice, a couple of the old fellas who used to be here have popped by.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they're pretty impressed and happy that it's
at least being used.
That it's being used for something which is creative and energetic and vibrant. Yeah.
So can you just, describe what your shows are like?
It's called Senior Piggywig's Bohemian Love Theatre. It's a circus-style tent. We're touring this around the place at the moment to like fringe festivals and camping festivals and such like.
There's really grand plans for Newcastle as a cultural centre, a big cultural precinct and a new art gallery.
Yeah.
What do you think about that sort of stuff?
What I think is I'm very pleased that there are people thinking in creative kind of terms and that they're aware of the importance of culture and creativity in a community. But what I would like to see is more of a connection with the real life living culture which already is present in this community, and rather than sort of this insert culture here kind of idea where you define a space and try and bring culture to it. When I travel around, I travel a bit, and people I meet in other places have often heard of Newcastle, often have an awareness of the fact that there is something, some people are migrating towards here to be involved in a creative culture.
Looking around us, you can sort of see the remnants of Newcastle's industrial past and present here.
Yeah.
But Newcastle has to change. It's going through this very conscious process of reinventing its identity from a working class steel town to maybe a uni town or a tourism destination. Well, and they keep saying cultural centre over and over again.
I reckon they could take a bold leap by just recognising what's already kicking along here anyway and putting some sort of force behind that.
It's all very well to have bands recording in the cool room of an old bowling club, but is this any way to a cultural vision? Is this going to put Newcastle on the map? In 2006, I was directing the Cultural Festival for the Commonwealth Games. I had a giant warehouse full of shipping containers in Melbourne that I had to fill. So I travelled all over the world to try and find artists to bring out for the Games. I went to 20 cities on just about every continent, and I thought a lot about what makes a city interesting culturally. Bizarrely, I found more artists from this place than any other place I went to. This is actually Glasgow, of all places. Now, they're pretty passionate about their football. They've got a lot of decaying heavy industry. They're redeveloping their waterfront. It could almost be Newcastle, but something going on here is a little bit different, and I want to find out what that is so I can find out the secret of the culture of this place. That's if I can figure out what they're saying. It's not completely like Newcastle. This little city of about 700,000 people has fought its way to the top of the list of the coolest cities in the UK. So how does a city better known for its shipyards and its industry manage to convince people that it's a hot cultural centre? Well, apparently it's got a lot more to do with the kind of DIY stuff going on in warehouses and bowling clubs than any grand cultural plan. This is Muttley. I don't think anyone in Glasgow knows what his real name is, but he runs this place, the Studio Warehouse Glasgow.
Because this building was originally built as a chandlery by the Anchor Line, which is one of the big shipping companies.
What does a chandlery like?
A chandlery is a store for boats.
Right.
Okay?
Yep, that all makes sense, yeah.
But big boats, in a big store. So it was originally built as that. And I looked up here one day and we're like, this looks interesting. Let's see what we can make of that. And that was about 4 years ago. So I think when we first opened up, it was a very, very, it's still raw, but it was very basic when we first moved in. So you had 2 walls, you didn't even have a front, and you had a bulb, and then you had 5-6 buckets of water, gathering your drips in the studio. And that was my first 2 hours of the day for about a year.
Emptying the buckets.
Emptying the buckets, man. And not easy. There's actually a lot of painters, considering that there's not a lot of painting about in contemporary art at the moment, but we seem to
Muttley gave me a tour of this massive space. For a measly £10 a week each, dozens of artists, musicians, breakdancers and God knows what else are all working from here.
But this is is one of the artists who's just moved out, Karen. She actually paints with cosmetics. We kind of built this frame for her, and then she came down and did it almost like a performance painting from Monday to Friday during Fashion Week. We don't use this floor, to be honest. We have, as you can hear, band rehearsal rooms. We have 3 band rooms, 6 bands sharing. This was the bar that they knocked up here when they started doing the raves. I love it. I just think it's just great.
Is the bar strictly legal?
This bar is strictly illegal. I know.
Risk assessment procedures, you've gone through and done all this?
Yeah. We've got that all sussed. This is an old copy. That's why it's down here. Done our big parties on the first floor as well when we needed rent early on. But now there's so much activity going on up here that we kind of have to be a little bit more restrictive with what we do on that side. And now we're actually in a position of phoning the police and telling them we're having a party. As opposed to it used to be like, the police are coming. And you'd bottles of vodka would be going everywhere, But you have to take your chances a wee bit, but at the same time, you know what you're doing.
How did the police react when they turned up and found people putting bottles of vodka everywhere? And
we obviously had a sort of project that we were working towards. The police understood that, and we were quite sensible in the way we managed the space and the events. And a couple of days, we had one fancy dress party where the police turned up, but no one believed it was the police. So that was an incident. That caused a few problems.
And how do the people that own this building react to the whole process of you?
Delighted, mate. Really? They're getting rent for something they can't rent to anyone else. I think our landlords completely ignored every landlord responsibility known to man. He's not spent a penny on the property, so every improvement has been made by ourselves. So for him to be getting rent for it, he's delighted.
It's not just the police and the landlords that are cutting the artists some slack in Glasgow. Even the council are on board. This place used to be a fish market, but now it's a council-sponsored sculpture studio.
It seems that the council here puts a fair amount of value on people making things, not just displaying and exhibiting. That seems to be the thing that I've really noticed about Glasgow compared to back where I come from, is that it seems everywhere I turn there's someone making something.
Yeah, I think it's about seeing the whole sort of picture, if you like, that for the visual arts in Glasgow to thrive, there needs to be an infrastructure for production as well as presentation. So, a lot of that has been done strategically, and we're, concerned to make sure that there are places that artists can make work and that Glasgow can be a place that artists can have a viable career. Other things have happened slightly less strategically, where there's a sort of willingness on the part of the council to respond to the demands that are, put on the city by artists, so that, vacant shop spaces, if no one else wants them and an artist wants to use it for an exhibition, then, that can happen. So these things are more sort of ad hoc and not quite so organised, but have a tremendous impact. I suppose Glasgow manages to let out so many vacant spaces because it has so many vacant spaces, so it's the fact that possibly the city's had economic problems that have
created an opportunity.
Exactly. We're not an incredibly rich city. There's a lot of poverty in Glasgow, but with that comes a lot of inventiveness, I think, and people making opportunities where they can find them.
It's an industrial town, It's a town that's, it's probably, the leading city in the Industrial Revolution, or one of them, and today a lot of those industries have left and boarded up and closed down, It's the same set of problems that Newcastle's got.
It's not like they didn't try and build an iconic cultural centre in Glasgow. Unfortunately, all they got was this aluminium knockoff of the Sydney Opera House. In all the time I spent in Glasgow investigating the cultural hotspots, no one has ever told me to come here.
There's something I really like about a city where the Gallery of Modern Art is most famous for the fact that some prankster keeps sticking a traffic cone on the statue out the front. Just down the road from Glasgow's iconic art school, around here is an example of one of these spaces where a group of artists are just getting in there, taking over and making things happen.
Hello. This space we hunted for quite a long time. It's been, I think, abandoned for up to 4 or 5 years.
Do you still enforce the men-only rule in the workshop?
Yes, yes. In this sort of corner of the space, we had Douglas Moreland's piece, which is a giant black wing
This place doesn't look at all like an art gallery. You know?
No.
Don't artists want spaces that look like art galleries? Like,
this space definitely does have its limitations in that you're absolutely forced to work with a space. You know, you don't have a clean wall where you can put up 4 paintings. You've got to fit them in between, you know, like in between the different wallpapers and textures and things on the wall. I mean this is our major challenge space because we have a very leaky wall here.
Yeah.
And it's warped a couple drawings in the past.
Ooh.
Moldy, yeah, don't touch.
Yep, that's real.
This is one of the things, you know, it's interesting to me because artists, to be honest, artists don't care. I can't believe it, you know, it's like, they really don't. They're like, oh, it's fine, you know, I can make another one of those drawings. What I think attracts the community to Low Salt is the community, you know, people do come, they attend events, and it's a place that people can come and visit and
it's a social
talk
thing
about things. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is a social thing, definitely.
Another great example of the social side of art is Southside Studios.
Hello.
This place might be even less well known for its art than its pizza.
My 76-year-old grandfather and myself built this in 3 days, and we've been making pizzas for openings at the gallery every month here in Glasgow. And the pizza's ready.
Bevan's studio over here. Australian TV. Bevan. Bevan's studio. Bevan makes wonderful things.
Makes a mess and clean.
Makes cake. Do you make the cake, Bevan?
No, it's my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
It's his birthday. And Bevan also makes furniture. He made these. Look at this one.
Sit on that.
Sit on that one.
Yeah, that works.
Altogether we have 13 studios and we have 17 artists. But one of our artists just bought the property next door, so he has all this, so that's going to be another 10, 12 studios.
I guess what I'm thinking is if you leave any place long enough in Glasgow, artists are going to move in there. And their grandfathers are probably going to build a pizza oven. It seems that everywhere artists are sweet-talking, bluffing, scamming or scheming their way into the most unlikely of art spaces, often to the surprise of a lot of incredulous landlords.
Like spending a month here cleaning, you just constantly have this pitch and shit smell on yourself.
I can't even imagine what would have been involved in cleaning out a sawmill that had been derelict for 25 years. They even turned up a mummified cat that became a symbol for an amazing art exhibition.
In here it was this house with sort of plaster slopes creeping down, and slopes looked like the house had just slided into this space. But at the same time, it blocked off all that area, which we were not allowed to use because it's actually very, well, derelict.
It's dangerous in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not safe to do this.
Yeah.
It's not. Of course, like somebody could just fall through the floor, but you just assume that the people that come here accept the fact that this is something where you don't get completely wrecked. Somebody did this massive cabbage out of paper. It was almost reaching the ceiling right in the back of the room.
All these places don't look like much, but they incubate all kinds of possibilities, with the potential for really big things. Take this place, the Chateau. It's been around a few years longer than a lot of the spaces I visited. It's been the birthplace for countless visual artists. Camille and dozens of local fashion designers who now share a shop on the main drag of Glasgow. Not to mention musicians. This is the room where Franz Ferdinand played their first ever gig. I guess they're so busy touring the world now that they haven't had time to come back and collect their hula hoops. With Franz Ferdinand, Belle and Sebastian, Snow Patrol, Sons and Daughters, or the seemingly thousands of other Glasgow bands that are all over the mainstream and indie airwaves, and the countless visual artists that I've met on my various trips, it seems as though there's something uniquely fertile about the creative environment here in Glasgow. I know it's not as simple as just picking up the art scene from Glasgow and trying to move it to a place like Newcastle. But I think what you should take away from a place like Glasgow is a set of ideas. And they're about valuing your opportunities. Ah, Newcastle. There's no place like home. Since I was a teenager, I've often walked these streets, peered in these empty windows and imagined all the things that might be happening in them. And I know I'm not the only one. After visiting a place like Glasgow, I come back to Newcastle with a very different sense of where we might find this city's culture.
Culture is an interesting word. Art might be a formal and static and sterile thing, but culture also means a medium that living things grow in. Culture isn't something that you pay to see in an art gallery or spend 2 hours watching at a performance. Culture should be exciting. It should be something that you're part of. On one level, I do understand why people build places like this. It creates an icon for the city, and people do come together at times for culture here. But the cynic in me wonders whether it's built because it's safe and quantifiable, and because you can write reassuring reports about its economic impact, rather than because anyone actually thinks that Australian culture will get generated here. Most importantly, it's a place where you can display, celebrate and preserve culture. But is culture something that needs preserving? Or can it sometimes be the infection that's trying to attack us? And that's where we're going next week, just across the road, where Not Quite Art continues.